Joining me now, Republican strategist, former White House political director, and CNN contributor Ed Rollins, columnist for the New York Daily News, also a CNN contributor, Errol Louis, and columnist for Forbes.com, Dan Gerstein. All right, so President Obama is planning this joint address before Congress. Let me start with you, Ed. Is this a smart idea, good strategy?
He certainly makes it serious by doing it. It's almost like, okay, we're going to start a new school year, new congressional. He certainly elevates it. Sometimes it's a tough form, though. It's you know, you have the Republicans yelling and screaming at you, and the Democrats cheering you on every word. But if ever there's a place to carry it out, this is it. And it really makes it a very serious speech.
You know, the thing that we keep hearing again and again is that this plan is not really a plan. It's several various proposals, and that it's too vague and so forth. What kind of specifics does the president need to provide, Errol?
Well, he is already contemplating, and this speech, I think, will be the first step in it, stepping more forward and letting people know that he wants certain items. He doesn't want certain items. He's going to start favoring a bill. I think in some ways they're still playing for a little bit of time. There's still a couple of weeks left in the allotment that Max Baucus has to try and get the Senate in line. At the end of that, I think you're going to really start seeing him step forward. The key question of public option remains a bit of a mystery, but some of the other basics that there's got to be portability. They can't turn down people for prior medical conditions. The affordability, the cost savings factors have got to be, you know, clear and explainable. I think if he doesn't get a bill with that, he's not going to be very happy. But we are going to start to see the president, I think, step forward. You know,
one of the big things is that he has his work cut out for him. People think this thing is too big. They think that it is too expensive. In fact, we have a screen that we can share with our viewers where people were asked, it's a recent CNN poll, people were asked the question, you know, the effect of the Obama healthcare plan on your medical costs. Take a look at the screen that we have. 55% of those people who were polled said that they thought that, there it is there, 55% said that they thought their medical costs are going to increase under this Obama plan. Only 19% said they thought it would decrease, and 24% said that they think that it will remain the same. People think this thing is too expensive and that it is going to mean out-of-pocket expenses for them.
I think you hit the nail on the head. There isn't one thing. There's 5 bills in Congress. The president didn't put forward a plan, and I think the result is we have mass confusion. And that poll sample is a perfect indictment of this process, is that the public is not convinced that the central goal that the president laid out, that this is going to lower healthcare costs for the government, for business, and for individuals, is going to be met. And I think that is the chief challenge he has in this speech, and whatever happens afterwards is he's got to put forward, I think the facts matter more than the form. He's got to be specific. He's got to say, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to affect you, this is how it's going to save money. And then I think ultimately he's got to challenge the Republicans to step off and say, if you don't like this plan, put forward an alternative. Then becomes a choice rather than just a up and down referendum on the Obama plan.
You know, if the support is not there, if people are skeptical, should Democrats try to ram this thing through without Republican support?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any Republican support at the end of the day. It's too you know, if you'd have put malpractice reform or tort reform or any of that in there, there may have been some things that obviously Republicans might have gone for. But fundamentally, Republicans are opposed to this premise. I think the key thing here is you've got 80% of the country who have some sort of health care plus the Medicare. And if these people, as these polls are showing, feel that their health care is not going to be as good and more expensive, you've somehow got to convince them that's not true. If you don't, then obviously you can still shove something through because you probably have the votes to do that, but you're going to have a very unhappy audience, particularly senior citizens and younger people who are now going to have to pay something. Young people who don't have health insurance today, they're not getting free health insurance. They're going to have a mandated plan in which they've got to pay something every month, and that's going to alter their lives a little bit.
Yeah, Errol, in many ways, this is going to, it could very well come down to a fight within the Democratic Party, where you basically have your blue dog Democrats on one hand insisting you've got to drop this public option. On the other hand, you have Democrats like Pelosi, for instance, saying, no, it absolutely has to be in there for it to get through. How do they balance out those two interests? I mean, two very different sides of the party.
It'll be a different kind of a fight. I mean, the hard calculation, of course, is going to be, you know, which of the blue dogs are really in danger, which are really seats that actually might flip Republican. If there are too many of them, obviously that'll mean more than if there are not. The Progressive Caucus has, in fact, though, been heard from. And, you know, when you have Anthony Weiner coming on and saying, I'm going to vote against this bill and I'll take 99 other Democrats with me and we'll sink this thing if it doesn't have a public option, that's a real threat. And Nancy Pelosi is going to be very attentive to that, too. I think it becomes a different kind of a fight, though, when it's a caucus fight. And that's where the president stepping in will mean a lot. That's when promises can be made. Look, you're in a marginal seat. I'll come to your district. I'll do a big rally at your local high school to make sure that you get reelected if you're a blue dog Democrat. We're going to start to see a lot of bargaining go on. And it'll happen a lot faster once Republicans are sort of written out of the equation. Okay, we're going to have to take a pause here, but we will be back with our panel in just a moment. But first, sitting in for Campbell Brown at the top of the hour, John Roberts. John.
Lisa, thanks. Tonight we've got an incredible story. A man survives after his heart stops for 45 minutes. I'll talk to the doctors who literally brought him back from the dead. We're also taking a closer look at that story that you mentioned, allegations of hazing and nude parties involving U.S. Embassy contractors in Afghanistan. Plus, is Whitney Houston really ready to make her comeback? Everyone's talking about her big debut. We're going to have that and our mashup of all the other day's news coming your way at the top of the hour. Lisa, we will see you then.
And we'll have much more with our panel next. And we are back now with our panel. Dan, I want to turn to you. Public option, does it have to be in there?
No, and I think the president's pretty much signaling right now that they're going to have to cut that out of whatever plan that he advocates. And then I think that whatever else they put forward instantly becomes viable, not just with the Democratic caucus. I think they have a real potential to pick off some moderate Republican supports. So I think, in a sense, he has two persuasion campaigns. One, as we talked about, he's going to have to convince the American people that this is going to meet the goals of reducing costs and improving the quality of care they get. And then secondly, he's going to have to convince his base that a serious reform plan without the public option and some other mechanism to create more choice and competition is a major victory, and it is. And so I think that's where he's going to have to exert some real leadership. And I think to a certain extent, this is not a healthcare debate anymore. It's going to become a leadership test for the president.
All right. I want to turn to Afghanistan right now. The opposition to the war in Afghanistan has really been picking up here. We have another graph that we could show, a graphic that we can show to share with our viewers. Take a look at these numbers. Look at that. Opposition to the U.S. war in Afghanistan, it's now at 57%. Just in April, it was at 46%. Ed, what do you make of this? I mean, this is a significant, an 11% increase.
This is, if the president plans on keeping our troops there, and he's going to have to add troops because obviously the troops aren't sufficient now, he's got to convince both his constituents, which are very anti-war, that this is not a quick fix. This is not a year or 2 years. If you're going to go in Afghanistan and try and create stability, it's a long-term goal. And if you want to do that, the American public has to be with you. If not, we're going to see an erosion. Those numbers will get a lot higher than they are today. Yeah,
let me put up another graphic that we have in the time remaining, because this is really telling. It's Democrats. Those are the folks who are opposed to this. Democrats now 73%. You have the number there, 73% now opposing the U.S. war in Afghanistan. So, and Senator Russ Feingold, in fact, he was calling for a timetable for withdrawal in Afghanistan. Could this become a bigger problem for the president long-term than even health care, Errol?
I call it a challenge. I don't know if it's a problem. The reality is, just as Ed says, I mean, something like the Powell Doctrine is just the reality of it. If there's not an overwhelming amount of support, people are going to start to ask questions. Why are we trying to build a nation here? Do we have the right people there? 22-year-olds with rifles are not the people to put together in a functioning secular economy for the Afghan people. It's just not the right mix. That doesn't mean we withdraw our interests. It doesn't mean we stop trying to make things better there. But we may not have the right mix of trainers, troops, and businesses to make something happen.
Well, I think what that poll doesn't really show is intensity. And I think that the good news for the president right now is I think that he has a longer leash when it comes to Afghanistan than President Bush had on Iraq, in large part because American people still fundamentally believe that this is the good war. This is the place that attacked us on 9/11. This is where the Taliban is regaining strength. This is where Al-Qaeda is based. This is a real threat to us. So I think he will have more of a cushion politically. But at the same time, if the casualty count continues to rise, it is going to continue to be a problem.
All right, gentlemen, we are out of time. Dan Gerstein, Ed Rollins, Errol Louis, thank you very much for joining us. And a reminder to join Lou on the radio Monday through Friday for the Lou Dobbs Radio Show. Go to loudobbs.com to find local listings for the Lou Dobbs Show on the radio. And thanks for being with us tonight. For all of us here, thanks for watching. Good night from New York. Next, sitting in for Campbell Brown, John Roberts.
CNN Primetime begins right now.